Yeah, I'd been a fan of the band since that Neil Young tribute came out, the Bridge album. That was when I was really first introduced to the Lips. They'd covered After the Gold Rush. All those bands on that album, I became fans of, but that was kind of my first big introduction to the Lips. And it wasn't really until after the Clouds tour ended and Ronald left when they started doing the parking lot experiments and the boombox experiments in Oklahoma City and were making Zyreka. That was kind of when I actually started getting to know Wayne more. My friend Daryl Bascom was the Lips road manager at the time. And so I was, once they came out with Soft Bulletin, we're going on tour as a three-piece, I was able to go on the road with them some and help with merch and such. And that's kind of how I started getting to know Wayne. And that was around the time that he started talking more about the Christmas on Mars concept. And at that point, I've been around him long enough to realize that, once he starts talking about some type of a project that he wanted to work on, an idea, more than likely that would come to reality in some way. And so when they were talking about Christmas on Mars, it made sense, really. It didn't seem like a far out concept because, especially like Santa Claus and Christmas had always been a big part of the Lips stage presence there. Wayne's art, all the postcards with Santa Claus on them, the shirts. I remember there was a shirt in the mid-90s that had like an alien on the front and it said up Believe, Santa Claus on the back. So Santa Claus killing himself on a Mars space station definitely sounded like something that would come from the Lips. So it was pretty cool to think about that concept and then again to see it actually start to happen. Probably around April of 2001 when Wayne approached me about doing some of the filming on the movie. And I think it ended up being like June of 2001 when we did the first scene, filmed the first scene basically in a medical bay. I was playing one of the doctors where we had recovered Santa Claus's body. Wayne's brother was playing the dead Santa Claus. Santa Claus had ran out of the space station.
Hello, I'm Wayne's brother, Ken. I play suicidal Santa Claus. Goes crazy, kills himself.
He was frozen, and he had these teeth that they'd put inside of his mouth, basically make it look like his mouth had kind of shrunk around the teeth. It was pretty cool. The scene was actually in the medical bay. It was supposed to be cold. It was so cold, especially on Mars, where if he ran out, he froze to death. And the funny thing was, at the time, it was 100 degrees in Oklahoma, and we were filming in the back of Wayne's compound. It was so hot. I mean, we started filming kind of like mid to late afternoon, and we had these DuPont suits on, where they cover even your head. The only thing that was showing was your face. And these large rubber gloves, kind of those industrial, real thick gloves. And so anytime I would move my arms around or lift my arm up, sweat would just pour out like water, like I was pouring a glass of water onto the ground, to the point where I was like having to make sure I wasn't slipping on my own sweat. It was pretty nasty, but funny too. And then Wayne had said that, he saw how much I was just dripping everywhere, and he was talking about how, he said he'd worn those gloves the day before and the same thing happened to him. I was like, oh my God. It was bad enough to realize you're in someone else's sweat too. It was hilarious. But it was a fun night. We probably anywhere 8 to 12 hours that we filmed that first scene. It was a great experience because I'd never been, in a movie set, and just to see everything take place and just see the process happen and to see the idea actually develop into reality was quite impressive. And we were even talking that week and that month about, my son wasn't born yet. He was born in August. And we're talking about, some of the baby scenes, Austin could be, in the movie. But I don't think they actually filmed parts with the infant until like years later, 3 years later. So anyway, that was just kind of interesting because there was so much, the touring and Yoshibi coming out. they're having to work on the movie in between tours and recording and everything. So it was, it was a lot of work, and it was spread over quite a few years. But that was the only way you could get it done. There was always some type of project going on. And then there were a couple other scenes where I wasn't actually in the movie, but I was just there on set, kind of just helping with various items. So it was a fun period of years where that was being filmed. As far as the sets go and the set building, one thing I remember that was interesting to me at the time was just to see, he'd have an idea for what a room would look like in the space station, or for a certain scene, and then go to a local hardware store and get things. Wayne could go to Lowe's and pick out all this stuff, and in his mind, he was able to see it all as creating this, an inside of a space station. Even stuff like the tube used for French drains, those black drainage tubes that were flexible, and to see them be used, in the scenes all over, as bent pipes, and they might be carrying electrical pipes, whatever you would see in a actual space station. So that was really neat to see how the sets were made, and it was. Wayne's backyard area had all sorts of objects that were used to, for insides of a space station, or just to make one scene. And I can't remember what the door was made of that would rotate to open, but it had that's where they'd use that kind of sound. It was like you'd see something like that on Star Trek. But it was all that stuff was just, I'm sure the neighbors at times were thinking, what is all this stuff he's bringing into his yard? That was awesome. So it was a lot of fun. Just the whole do-it-yourself, Oklahoma work ethic at its finest hour. It was great to see. The first time I saw the movie, I think it was a few months before it actually came out officially on DVD. Wayne had gotten a preview copy on DVD and took it over to a friend's house in the Plaza District. Everybody, a lot of people that had been in the movie or had helped the movie were there, and it was pretty late at night, dark. Everything was dark except for the TV screen. And you could can still remember you seeing just waves of pot smoke going across the light from the TV. So it was a great way to see the show for the first time, or see the movie for the first time. Everybody was excited to actually see what you'd only seen in different parts, and maybe one small scene to actually come in to fruition as a whole movie. So that was a really, everybody was happy for Wayne, and that his dream had kind of come to for this movie. It was a great night. One of the main memories or biggest takeaways I have from being involved or just being around the Lips camp during that time was the combination of creativity and art mixed with such a strong work ethic. That was kind of a big life lesson to see, if you believe in something and believe in what you're doing, and you have the determination and put the work in to see it actually be completed. That was very impressive. I've never seen people work harder than, I've seen people around the Lips over the years. So that was, before the movie and after the movie, a group of people who just believe in what they're doing, and it's always been a pleasure and a privilege to be around.